Hi, I'm Henrietta. I'm the Senior Communications Officer in the Communications team at Time to Change. Today, we're going to talk about maximising your communication resources. I'm here with Emma from the Time to Change York Hub.
Thanks, Henrietta. Yes, so my name is Emma and I'm a Time to Change champion and also the project coordinator for the Time to Change York Hub. And our presentation today has been made in conjunction with one of our fabulous champions, Jackie, as well. So what I'll do is I'll start off with just a brief agenda as to what this presentation is going to cover, and then we'll move into the main presentation itself. So what we're going to do is cover 4 key points that we think are vital to keep in mind when planning and delivering champion activities for your hub. And we'll have some examples of what we've done at York. So we'll just start off with a little bit of a background as to what we've done at York. So here at York, we've been a hub kind of officially for just over a year. We officially launched in August last year. And of course, every hub's different. So we've got a part-time coordinator, we've got quite a lot of active champions. So please don't look at what we're doing as what you should be doing. Your hub, your champions, you will have different time and resources. So this is just to give you a bit of an idea of what we've managed to do. So essentially we started pre-lockdown, quite traditionally. You'll see on the photos on the PowerPoint, we started with posters up in prominent place, libraries, cafes. The one in the photo happens to be at one of the universities in York. And then the other photo is of as a market stall. So York has a market every day, and we managed to, with Health Watch, get a stall there and give out time to change information. So we started quite traditionally, but of course we have also used electronic resources, and we use multiple forms of comms, and we'll talk about exactly what as we go through other parts of the presentation. But we essentially have tried anything and everything in a different variety of ways, but we don't do everything. So again, just because we use Facebook and Twitter, we've started to use YouTube, for example, don't feel as though you need to do that. Kind of use what's right for you, and again we'll come on to that. So in the meantime, I'll hand over to Henrietta, who's going to talk to you a bit about comms.
So firstly, I'm just going to give a quick overview of the Time to Change communications team and what areas we look after. So one key thing is the Time to Change brand. So we're responsible for making sure that our brand is used accurately and appropriately. We have clear guidelines that outline what that means, and I'll talk about those a bit more later on. We also create lots of branded materials to help our internal teams and our social movement communicate on behalf of Time to Change. We lead on the planning and delivery of Time to Talk Day, which is our annual mass participation event. I'm sure lots of you are familiar with it. And my colleagues on the PR side of the team look after all of our media and PR activity. So responding to media requests, proactive media work, and working with our media volunteers. For anything related to our website or social media channels, the digital team are the best people to speak to, and you can get in touch with them at digital@time-to-change.org.uk. And for any general comms questions, you're very welcome to drop me an email and I will do my best to help. So the first thing we're going to talk about in terms of things to think about when you're planning and delivering communications as a Time to Change hub is keeping your comms on message. So this is really important for ensuring that all your communications are contributing to achieving your hub's aims. So as a Time to Change hub, your overall aim is tackling mental health stigma and discrimination in your area. I think how you do that will look differently for every hub. Will look different for every hub. But the really important thing is just to make sure all your communications link back to tackling stigma and discrimination as much as possible, and just make sure anyone who's communicating on your behalf or on your hub's behalf understands that. It's not always easy, but we've got plenty of tools and resources to help you keep on message. The first thing is our brand platform. So that's a collection of branded materials hosted on the resources section of our website. So we've got hundreds of resources available on there, from general posters and pull-up banners to campaign-specific materials, for example, for Ask Twice and for Time to Talk Day. Many of the resources are customizable, so they can be edited with different messaging or to include your hub's logo. That's one way you can help keep your comms on message and ensure that your branding is consistent. That will help you grow your local brand recognition and make sure that you're recognisable to people in your local community. Another really useful resource is our brand guidelines. These tell you lots more about our brand, from our colour palette to our tone of voice and the type of imagery we try to use. You might find it useful to share those guidelines with champions or with anyone else who's communicating on behalf of the hub to help make sure that they stay on message and that they know our tone of voice as well. We also have communication guidelines specifically for hubs, which have lots of useful info and tips to help you make the most of your communications. If you aren't familiar with any of those resources and you'd like to know more, feel free to drop me an email and I can point you in the right direction. Now, Emma at Time to Change York is going to talk a bit about how the hub have kept their comms on message.
Yeah, thanks, Henrietta. We absolutely agree with what Henrietta's just said. It is vital to keep on message as much as possible. And that's what really helps with our comms and boosts our reach of our comms and interaction as well, is remembering ourselves as part of the Time to Change campaign. Our uniqueness is the fact that we are trying to end mental health stigma and discrimination. And by sticking with our kind of unique point there, we find really, really helpful. We use the downloadable images and graphics that Henrietta has just mentioned. You can see on the slide there, we've used one of the images, the one on the right, to produce some bespoke coasters that we've delivered to cafes and restaurants and various venues and employers around the city of York. And it's very tempting to have a stab at coming up with your own graphic. And I know, I mean, I'm no expert, it is never going to be as good. And it's just far easier to download the ones that are on the national website. You'll see in the image on the left, we've added the Time to Change York logo in the bottom right there. And again, that was just a standard template in the resource hub on the national website. And then we just typed in the text. No one should feel ashamed to talk about mental health, because that is the same text that's on our coasters. So again, Henrietta mentioned about branding and consistency. So that's something we're doing and we find really, really helpful. And certainly when we get feedback, it is being on message and having that unique message about ending stigma and discrimination that gets the most interaction from the public and employers, etc. One thing to say, it is really, really easy to get into the trap, particularly on social media, so your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram, of sharing, liking, reposting other people's material. And whilst that's fine, it should not be it should be the minimal, for want of a better phrase. I'm not, most of our work is on the stigma and discrimination. We will share other people's events, so we'll share Mind events, etc. But it is not our primary message. And then I think the final thing to say about keeping on message is whenever we in York as a hub, we have champions meetings and we talk to our various partners and things, we always remind ourselves that we're here to end mental health stigma and discrimination. We keep mentioning it because that's one surefire way not to forget to do it. And we do as well as champions kind of call each other out, and say, oh, is that on message? Are we sure? Why are we doing this? So don't be afraid to ask that question of yourself and of your fellow champions and your hub partners, is what we're doing keeping on message? And then you can't go wrong. And I'll hand back to Henrietta for the next slide.
So the next point we'll talk about is using your skills and resources effectively. So there are lots of different communication channels, from social media to local advertising and local media. And it can be very tempting to try and use them all. It's not always the most effective approach. So we'd suggest thinking about what channels will help you reach your particular audiences most effectively, and which channels you have the resources and the skills to use. So the Time to Change comms team, again, can help you make the most of these channels. As I mentioned before, our ready to use and customizable resources on our brand platform can help you do that. They'll save you time and effort, as you don't have to create everything from scratch. So if you need digital graphics to use on social media, or posters to put up in the community, you'll find all of those on our website. Making connections with local media can also be a great way to get your message out to people in the area that you're working in. You can see an example on the screen from this year's Time to Talk Day. So it's a local coverage of an event that the Cannock Chase Hub held in a local pub. So the Time to Change media team are very happy to support you in reaching out to local media. So Bryony Ackerts, our media officer, is very happy to answer any questions and can help with things like media advice, so how to approach local or regional media, creating media hooks and developing stories, how to respond to media requests. They can also provide tips for hub spokespeople ahead of interviews, so that you can ensure that everyone knows, how to deal with interview questions and how to keep on message. They can also help with templates for press releases, or give you feedback on a draft press release. And they can advise champions on how to work with the media, including things like sharing their stories or info about events or activities that they're organising. Another channel that you might make use of is social media. It can be quite resource intensive, as you tend to need lots of content to keep it fresh. So if you don't have the resource to create all the content yourself, you can retweet or share content from the main Time to Change social media channels. And you might also have local champions who are really keen to help create content. And now I'm going to hand over to Emma, who can talk more about how the York Hub have put this into practice.
Yeah, thanks, Henrietta. So yeah, I will talk about the things we do, but before, I just want to reiterate what Henrietta said, is you don't have to do everything. We don't do everything in York, you don't have to do everything, and also you don't need to be an expert, and it's okay to experiment, learn as you go, change things, decide it's not right for your hub or you as a champion. So don't be afraid to try things. In terms of using our skills and resources effectively, keeping it simple is one very effective way. So as well as using the Time to Change resources that we mentioned previously that are on the website, anything we do produce ourselves is just standard Microsoft software. Anybody can do it, pretty much. If I can do it, we can all do it. So keep it simple, keep it on message like we said before. And then in terms of your skills and resources, so what we've done in York is ask ourselves as champions, what skills and experience have we got? And we've asked our hub partners what they've got. And what we found is that we already had quite a wide variety of skills. So for example, our champion Jackie, she does all our Facebook. She's got experience of paid work experience in the past of marketing. So that's an absolute dream for us. So of course we capitalise on and use that. In terms of other champions, we've got a lady who's brilliant on using Instagram. So that's fantastic. And also YouTube. So lockdown has given us an opportunity to share more and more resources electronically. And we didn't, on day one, back in August last year, we didn't have YouTube. It's something that we've done in May this year. So again, you don't have to use all your skills at once. You can gradually build it up. So we've done that through a champion who's got the experience. We've got some champions who are absolutely fantastic at radio interviews. We've also got a local TV channel. And as you can see from the photo, wearing your Time to Change champion t-shirt, that is a form of comms and communicating to the world. So it doesn't have to be just social media either. I think that's something else that possibly we can get into a trap of thinking that comms is social media, particularly in this digital age. But it isn't. Press releases, again, we've got some champions fantastic with words, so personal blogs, We've also got a champion who's great at video editing. And what we found is sort of using those skills and resources and teaching other is the best way. And other things we do, obviously we're in a socially distanced world at the moment, but information stands. We have got some champions here in York that love to be on an information stand and chat to people at events. So again, don't just think social media, think a lot more broadly. And again, just remind everybody, you've all got different capacity as a champion or as a hub. So please don't think, oh my goodness, we're not doing half of this, we're no good. You know, this is not the purpose of this talk. This is just to let you know some of the things that we are doing, and there'll be things that we're not doing. So we haven't, until very, very recently, we've not had the skills and resources for a LinkedIn account. We've actually got a champion who literally last week decided she wants to set up a LinkedIn account for us. So fabulous, off we go. So again, just use your skills and resources as you can, and ask around as well. You'll be surprised with your hub partners. So we had some advice. We're an organic hub, so our funder had a comms team, and they helped us out for a while and helped us gain some of our skills, particularly with, for example, adding subtitles to videos, you know, skills that we just didn't have. So again, ask around. Don't feel as though you have to do it all as an individual or a hub. And yeah, we find using our skills and resources and sharing our own content of lived experience is what really makes a difference. And I'll hand over to Henrietta, who's going to talk about knowing and reaching your audience next.
Yes, so to effectively get your message out, you really need to know who your audience is. And while we can support you with lots of communication tools, as a hub, you have the knowledge and the expertise when it comes to knowing your local communities. So whoever your audiences are, you need to try and harness as much knowledge as possible around things like what channels they use, what spaces they go to in the community, what types of content will resonate with them. And there might be different audiences that you want to reach as a hub, in which case you might need to tailor your messaging in order to make sure that it resonates across those different audience groups. And you might also need to try out different channels to reach those different audiences, because they might not all respond to the same channels or methods of communication. So some of our campaigns have been designed to reach specific audiences. So you might find that they're helpful if you're trying to reach one of those audiences. For example, if you want to reach a cooler male audience, our Ask Twice or In Your Corner campaigns are designed for a male audience who are less familiar with mental health and maybe newer to the topic. So again, we have lots of resources from those campaigns available on our website. And yeah, over time you can kind of build on that knowledge of your audiences using things like research and analytics to really work out what they respond to and how you can best reach them. And now I'm going to hand over back to Emma to talk about how the York Club have done this.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it might be worth just, certainly for me, reminding ourselves, the overarching, you know, who we want to reach is that audience with no lived experience of mental health problems. And as well, for us here in York, we also like to slightly extend that to share experiences amongst the mental health community where people have got a different lived experience, and there can still be stigma and discrimination within the lived experience. You know, we all have biases. So just to remind ourselves that broadly, we are really trying to reach out to those of our communities with no lived experience. And then of course, as Henrietta said, you know, it's then thinking about who do we want to then target, because obviously having everyone as a target is a bit ambitious. So we for York in particular, for example, we've got employers as a target. We do have the general public as a target, and we also have health professionals, so not necessarily mental health professionals, but GPs, etc. So we have 3 broad categories, which is just useful because it helps us to have a focus as to who we are trying to aim our content at. We also are very mindful that not everybody likes to use the same form of communication. So just like some of you guys might not use social media at all, for example. Also at the moment, particularly in the socially distanced world and a lot of things going to digital, we're thinking about digital exclusion and how do we reach our audiences that may not have access to the internet, for example. So we're looking at press releases in local magazines and local newspaper, and also ongoing, we still continue to do radio interviews as well on local radio. We experiment with different approaches. It's really, really complex and very random. Some things that get a lot of attention, we repeat the same thing a week later and it doesn't. It's a fickle world, is comms. And so it can make it quite tricky, but obviously there are things we can do to help to reach our audience. And so we do try lots of different methods of communication. And what we find really, really works as well and helps with the engagement is the champions lived experience. Sharing our lived experience is what gets people interested and taking notice. And we find that's really powerful. And as our hub has grown, we're over a year old, champions have got skills and experience and confidence. We're all getting more confident at sharing our lived experience in a variety of ways, which includes videos as well now, and champions standing up and sharing their experience through our YouTube channel, for example. So there's lots of different ways of reaching the audience, but we do find that that sharing of lived experience in whatever form, be it written, video, poetry, etc., makes a big difference. And of course, use of awareness days and our bespoke coasters that we showed quite a few slides ago now, getting those into cafes and restaurants, etc. We get those everywhere. And also we have tried and experimented with some paid for Facebook advertising, of which there will be more on later on. So yeah, so it is complicated and do experiment, but yeah, quite a lot of different things you can do. And I'll hand back to Henrietta, who's going to talk about getting the right content out and at the right time.
Yes, so now we're going to talk about generating the right content at the right time. To really help maximise your comms, you can make the most of the buzz around different mental health awareness events throughout the year. So using these events as hooks can help you secure more coverage, for example, in the local media, and help you get your message out to a wider audience. So World Mental Health Day, which is coming up in October, is a good example of a day where there will be naturally lots of buzz around mental health, and you can really use that as an opportunity to get your message out further. We're creating some resources and materials for World Mental Health Day, which we'll be sharing soon to help you spread the message. And as I mentioned earlier, Time to Talk Day is our biggest event of the year, and it's a great opportunity to make lots of noise about mental health and the importance of talking about mental health and how talking can help tackle stigma. So the next Time to Talk Day is coming up on Thursday, the 4th of February 2021. And you can see a sneak peek of the concept on the screen. So the concept for next year is called The Power of Small, and it's all about how a small conversation can make a big difference. So for Time to Talk Day, we provide you with lots of materials and resources so that you kind of have everything you need to help get the message out. That includes a conversation pack, which has lots of activities, ideas, templates, and basically it makes getting involved as easy as possible. And yeah, events like Time to Talk Day are a great way to get local clubs, employers or schools involved. So it's a really nice kind of opportunity to help extend your reach in your area. You can see an example on the screen of Blackpool FC getting involved with a Time to Change Blackpool event. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities out there. We'll be launching the next Time to Talk Day in November. So do keep an eye out and start thinking about how your hub can make the most of the day to create lots of extra buzz around mental health. And I will now hand over to Emma, who will talk about how they at York Hub generate the right content at the right time.
Thank you. Yeah, so generating the right content at the right time. Oh gosh, are we doing that? Well, it's again, it's an experiment in process, work in progress. We have got better over time. So as our hub has got older, we've started learning from, you know, what's worked, what hasn't. Of course, we use the national days, Time to Talk Day, World Mental Health Day, Mental Health Awareness Week, and National Awareness Days, weeks and months to help to structure what we're doing, and we find that works really well, and tying it in with other relevant campaigns, but of course still keeping on that stigma and discrimination message. And you can see the example we've got on the slide is what we're doing as champions in York is we ask ourselves a question every month about mental health, stigma and discrimination, and that was actually this month's one for World Suicide Prevention Day, earlier this month. And it's asking ourselves these questions, then we share those on our various channel, and we also answer that question in a different form. So some of our champions respond with a video or a podcast, and as you can see in that image, people respond with a couple of sentences which we can then turn into that graphic and share via our social media channels. So we are tying things into National Awareness Days, as Henrietta suggested. We're also using analytics, something we've started doing. It sounds scary, and for those of you like me who have never looked at an analytic in your life, it's not scary. It's quite easy to do, and at the moment we're doing this for the Facebook and the Twitter, and it is myself that looks after the Twitter account for Time to Change York, and it really is as simple as on your Twitter homepage there's a little button that says analytics, and you click on it. And then across the top, you have a few categories where you can analyse your homepage, so how many people view your Twitter homepage, analyse your tweets, see which ones get the most interaction. And if you go so far as posting a Twitter video, you can also analyse your videos. And that's just a really good way. You don't have to do it formally. You know, I every now and again literally click on that little menu, you know, on my phone, have a look and see what's doing well. It's always good to reflect after days such as the World Suicide Prevention Day that was earlier this month, to see, was it our lived experience content that got the most interaction? Was it this? Was it what time of day? Things like that. So it's really useful. You can, like Henrietta mentioned earlier on in this presentation, you can spend a lot of time on some of these things. And time is something that we don't often have. So again, I don't want to put anybody off or scare you away from this. You can do this at a high level. Don't worry too much about producing graphs and getting things into Excel or whatever. Fantastic if that's your thing and you can do that. And certainly for us, we're really, really lucky here in York because Champion Jackie, who helped us with this presentation, she manages our Facebook page, and she is brilliant at running off the analytics, and she can get it into a spreadsheet and send something to me that looks sensible and I can understand it. But she's got the time and chooses this time to spend on that. But you don't have to. It's just a balance as to what's right for you as a champion and for your hub if you're associated with your local hub. So yeah, so the use of analytics does work. But again, life is random. I tell you, the people on social media are random. So again, we get varying results. So one thing we have tried to do is some paid for Facebook advertisements. And with that, there'll be something for those of you who are going to be at a workshop later on and not watching the recording of this. There will be a session on the paid for advertisement, so I won't do any spoilers, but there are ways of targeting your audience by age, by gender, and we've had some really surprising results from that as to who's engaged with our content and who hasn't, who we thought might. So again, for quite relatively low sums of money, sort of we've spent less than £50 so far, so you know, you can spend thousands, but we're not. So that's another way to help get your content out to the right audience. So if you know you want to target younger men, for example, say aged 18 to 25, who are not interacting with other mental health platforms, so you can choose people who don't like Mind on Facebook, etc. So again, I won't go into too many details, but feel free to contact us at York if you'd like any more information on that. But yeah, it's not an exact science, but we have found that the older we get as a hub, we found it really, really useful to use an events calendar and tie in with national awareness weeks and events. And again, for those of you who are not watching this as a recording, we have got a session on events calendars coming up next. So I think that's all I'll say for now on generating content at the right time. And I think indeed that brings us to the very end of our presentation. So I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who's watching this, listening to this, and we hope you found something useful. And I'm sure, Henrietta, I'm sure you think the same.
Yes, thank you very much.